My favorite book growing up, you probably all have a favorite book growing up, but mine is called A Barrel of Laughs, A Vale of Tears. You can look it up. The author's name is Jules Pfeiffer. I loved reading that book as a young child and youth, and even now as an adult, every few years I will open it again and absolutely delight in this storybook. I read it actually just a year ago as the first book I ever read to Alana right after she was born. The book, A Barrel of Laughs, A Vale of Tears, is about a prince named Roger. And the book starts off with Roger as someone who always laughs and smiles, no matter what is happening around him. And his laughter is so contagious that whenever he gets close to another human being, they immediately burst out laughing too. They can't help it. It's completely uncontrollable. As he gets within maybe a half mile of them, they are on the floor writhing in laughter. So Prince Roger grows up knowing nothing but smiles and laughter. As a prince, he doesn't work, he doesn't struggle, he has anything he ever wants. He's never sad or troubled or stressed out. But Prince Roger also has no true relationships, no true connection with other people or the world, or even a sense of who he is, beyond someone who always likes to laugh and smile. In chapter 2 of this book, we get introduced to a character named J. Wellington Wizard. J. Wellington Wizard is kind of the wizard for the royal family. He serves them. And he's getting really tired of any time that Prince Roger comes by, he bursts out laughing. And so he comes out with a plan. He sends Roger on a quest. A little bit to help Roger, but I think a lot of it's just to make it so that he, as J. Wellington Wizard, can get some peace and quiet finally. On this quest, J. Wellington Wizard changes Roger into different animals and creatures and objects so that when other people come up to Roger, they don't burst out laughing. Instead, they can be themselves around him. The quest starts out with Prince Roger sent to the Forever Forest, where it's very easy to get into, but it's almost impossible to leave. The wizard thinks surely Roger will change in this place. He'll want to become better and change his ways, but Roger spends the first few years there just loafing around, playing tricks on people and animals and other creatures and laughing and smiling just the same. He changes into different objects and animals, but he's still the same Roger underneath. And he still thinks that playing tricks and laughing is all that there is to life. A few years in, though, he starts getting around some of the other people who are also stuck in the Forever Forest. There's a big group of them, and each night they come together for a feast and dancing and singing and sharing stories, some that are full of joy, some that are full of lots of loss and grief and hopes and fears. And as Roger spends more and more time around this village of people, he notices something he's never noticed before. He starts to care about them. As he hears their stories and knows them and continues to see them and see more than laughter. He sees there's something more to this world, and he sees that there's even a little bit of a connection starting. The story continues with Roger having to leave the Forever Forest and go to places like the Dastardly Divide and Sea of Screams and Mountain of Malice. In each of those places, Roger doesn't just see other people experiencing life. He starts to experience the fullness of life himself. He faces hunger and thirst. He gets betrayed by a best friend. He falls in love and then gets his heart broken. Prince Roger is mocked and scorned by those he thinks are good friends, and he's helped and saved by complete strangers. Roger gets tired and worn down and sacrifices his own strength and health for others. At the end of the book, Roger is no longer always smiling or laughing. And he can no longer force other people to laugh just by coming into the room with him. But somehow, at At the end of the story, as he is bruised and with scrapes and scars and much hungrier than he was at the beginning of this, Roger is actually happier. There's something more to his life now. There's friendship, there's love, there's connection, there's relationships, there's sacrifice. Prince Roger discovers a much bigger and more complicated world full of life and love, relationships and struggle. And it's in that struggle, in that realness of life, both in the times that are full of joy, but also the messiness and brokenness and sorrow and pain. It's in that full struggle and journey that Roger comes to experience the true blessing of life. I love this book, as you can tell. First, because it's funny and smart and well written and full of great characters. I just named a couple, but it's really, you should read it yourself, whatever your age is, and discover the great characters within it. But I also love this book because I find that, like Roger, I too experience more life and love and joy, not when everything is easy, not when I'm escaping the world and its troubles, but instead I find my life being more blessed and more full in the times where I face the struggle and messiness of our world. I find true blessing in the moments of real connection with others, when I hear their stories, not just of joy and adventure, but also of pain and loss, and get to meet them in that holy space. I find real blessing when I not just receive items and things, but when I also give and sacrifice and serve for others. I find real blessing not just when I'm loved, but when I love back. I find real blessing not when I play it safe, but when I follow God into the broken places, the messy places, the hard places, and see God at work in the people who are there. The story of Jacob that we heard today in Genesis could have been a much simpler one. We go back to chapter 27 of Genesis, and as Jacob steals that blessing, we could have had God just immediately give him that blessing and give him safety and rest and lots of possessions and a big family right then and there. Could have given him that promise and made it real with a snap of a finger. But God doesn't bless that way. When we think through pretty much all the stories in Scripture, and probably all the stories of our lives and stories of those in our world that we look up to, we realize that those moments of blessing are not just a snap of the finger, a single moment. They are often a lifelong struggle, a lifelong journey. God's blessing doesn't come as a snap of a finger. It doesn't come as a single mountaintop moment. For Jacob, this blessing comes only after years of leaving home, 20 years, in fact, which is a long time. We cover it in just a couple chapters in Genesis, but 20 years is a long time. Think of where you were 20 years ago and all that's happened in the past 20 years, and consider that for Jacob's life. And in those 20 years, it always hasn't been easy. He had to leave home, leave everything he ever knew, everyone he ever knew. He had to sleep without a bed or even a pillow and only a rock to put under his head. He had to work each day under the sun and into the nighttime for his father-in-law, Laban. He knew what it was like to be on the other side of trickery and deception. After he tricked his brother Esau, he then experienced the same from his father-in-law, Laban. And during that time, he finally experienced not just receiving gifts and possessions and inheritance, but he also experienced falling in love and having a family and the joy of meeting God in unexpected places. Here on the riverbank, Jacob's greatest blessing comes in a night he can't sleep, on the day before he must face the wrong he did to his own brother, and with a divine being who won't let him go, no matter how hard he tries to wrestle him away. God's blessings come through struggle, come through journeying, come through wrestling with God and with others, come through facing those tough moments, those hard moments, and not leaving, not running away, not hiding, but seeing in them God's wonderful beauty and grace and love. We see this most fully in the life of Jesus. Jesus doesn't stay hidden away on a mountaintop or inside a temple. That's not where he did most of his ministry. Instead, Jesus spent his days walking down dusty roads and sailing on troubled seas. Jesus went and touched lepers. He ate with outcasts. He forgave sinners. Jesus, and throughout his whole ministry, has very little money or possessions or safety, or doesn't even know most days where he will rest. He trusts in the hospitality and service of strangers. Jesus goes not where the world is neat and clean and easy, but where things are messy and dirty, where there's real pain and where true healing and grace are needed. Instead of a throne of power or privilege, Jesus follows the path that leads him to wrestling with God in the Garden of Gethsemane and dying on a cross on Golgotha. Jesus does this not because it's easy or comfortable or safe or gets him lots of possessions. But Jesus does this because this is where real love, real healing, real holiness is. This is where the full blessing for the world is given, not just for Jesus, but for each one of us who want a deeper connection with God and with others. Now, none of us are Jesus, and thank God for that. That'd be quite a weight to carry. But we all are people of faith, called to follow God as a lifelong journey. We are people who are called to join in Jacob's wrestling, not seeking the easy ways, the easy blessing, but the full and real one. We are called to seek out that beauty and wonder and awe and struggle and pain and joy in all the hard places, all the uneasy places, and know that those are the places where we may fully experience God's blessing, God's love, God's fullness for our lives. So today I have two questions I invite you to reflect upon, and I want to keep encouraging you, whether you're meeting in person with us or whether you are joining us online, to bring with you to worship a notepad or something to write with pen and paper, as each Sunday we'll have some time for reflection. And I want you to take a moment and consider and write down, if you can, your responses to these two questions for today. The first question I have for you is this. Is there a moment in your life that was a struggle? Maybe it's a moment where you knew even lots of pain or grief or loss, or a moment that maybe you didn't really want to enter into. That was a time that you thought this is going to be a scary time, but was also a time that brought you closer to God and other people. Is there a time that you've known struggle, but where God has blessed that time and brought you closer to what is holy and good? The second question I have for you is this. If our greatest blessings come in the midst of struggle, where may God be calling you to go? Is there a place in our community or world that maybe isn't safe or clean or easy or neat, but is a place where you can go and get messy and learn and love and serve others? So, first question is there a time when you've seen God at work in a struggle blessing you? And the second question is there some place God may be calling you to go that's not easy or neat, but where you can be a part of that blessing in the midst of struggle? Let's take a moment to reflect.